You've all been so incredibly engaged and engaging today. Let me ask you a bit of a trick question. Why can't you be like this all the time? Why can't you? No, it's actually a serious question, or half-serious question. People say, this is a cliche, that people are turned off by negativity, by negative advertising, by name-calling, by criminalizing, and so on. So is it partly your fault, collectively, I'm not going to pick on anybody here, that maybe there's a different way to prosecute the issues instead of prosecuting each other? Ms. Horvath.
Your fault, Martin.
It's an interesting. It's an interesting point, Martin. But I think people become more cynical about politics when they see that people make promises and parties make promises, and then they get elected, and those promises don't get fulfilled, and then folks say, well, so why do I even bother to vote if the promises that are being made that I voted for are not going to get implemented? And that's what creates great disappointment, and that's what creates great cynicism. And so then you really can't blame people for saying, why should I bother? And I don't know about you, but there's also people who we'll hear it all the time. I mean, I certainly hear it all the time. Is all politicians are the same. They don't think that their vote is going to make a difference. And so what I believe, and I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning, I believe we have to give people something to vote for, something to get excited about.
And I'm going to make a hockey analogy, which my team will be very happy with. So I grew up in the era of 6 teams, and I can remember when the Philadelphia Flyers started to put a goon on the ice and fight. And the fighting is what has become, or did become, certainly for years, I think we might be going in the other direction now in hockey, but the light was shone on the fight and people waited for the fight to happen. And I think there's an element of that in what's happened in political culture, is that people are waiting for the fight. The media, with all due respect, likes the fight, is not necessarily interested in the good news, because Andrea talks about promises broken, but who writes about the promises that were kept? Who writes about the hundreds of policy initiatives that governments deliver on? It's not news, right? And so I think that culture of getting your blood up and getting your fists up, that is something, again,
that's the hockey analogy.
We all have to take responsibility for.
First of all, I'm going to accept blame. Thank you for finally someone took a shot at the media, and deservedly so, because I do think we spend way too much time on the horse race, and I call it horse racism, and I just think we waste way too much time worrying about who's ahead and who's up and who's down, and not thinking about some of the issues. I'm going to do a quick, until one of you tells me time's up, I'm going to spend just the last couple of minutes throwing out a couple of questions on you, and you got to be brief. You got to either duck or say yes or no. And online voting, Mr. Schreiner.
Too vulnerable.
When the technology is ready, then I think that we should be looking at it.
The PCs are doing it right now for our leadership convention, and I think it's very exciting.
When it's secure. Sorry.
But by doing that, though, only 50% are there. That's the issue. So
mix.
by not voting, they've already decided. They've made their decision.
This is a good issue. This is worth another hour in itself. Let me quickly ask you, though, mandatory voting, Mr. Schreiner. You get in Australia, you get fined $20 if you don't vote. By the way, in Ontario, you get fined if you don't fasten your seatbelt or serve on a jury or get your vaccinations. But Mr. Schreiner.
I don't think we need top-down rules that say you have to vote. Let's give people an incentive to vote. Okay. I think one of the incentives to vote is that your vote counts, which is why I would support electoral reform.
I'm going to fine you because it was a one-word answer.
Oh, okay.
So, Ms. Mandatory voting.
I'd say inspiration, not punishment.
Good. Okay, Mr. Fedeli.
It's best served with a willing partner.
Okay.
I agree.
I wanted to thank the leaders for coming here today. This has never been done before. And I think it's just been a fascinating learning experience for me, and I really appreciate it, and I think our audience has found this really educational as well. So thank you.